Attention, a podcast guiding you from the chaos of the mind to the clarity of the heart. Here's your host, Holly McNeill.
Hello and welcome. Now more than ever, with the mental crisis going on in the world, with the divisiveness of the country, with everybody being fearful and anxious, it's so important to pay attention to where you're creating from, what habits and patterns or what clarity you're making your choices from, you're creating your world from, you're interacting with others from. So with excitement and joy, I'm happy to be here to relaunch the Pay Attention podcast. We're going back to the archives, to our original episodes. Well, you hear a lot about me and what we're doing here and what we can create together. So have a listen. I am on a journey, and I would like to invite you to join me. Hi, I'm Holly McNeill, the Mindfulness Architect, and you're about to listen to the initial episode of Pay Attention. I just wanted to jump on and tell you that this journey, this work I'm doing is always evolving for myself as well. And so I re-listened to the episode, and it's good. It's got a lot of good information about how your mind works, how you can change it, who I am, my journey. But it's also a lot from the head. And I really wanted to start this podcast out from the heart. Ultimately, my goal in this human journey, this evolution from our conditioned chaos in our head to the open flow of love and compassion in our heart, is to live moment by moment in that open heart. And so I invite you wholeheartedly to walk along this path with me. From episode to episode, you can find more about me on my website, hollymcneill.com, and in my classes or our awareness hub that has been going on for a couple of years now and meets monthly. We are in this together, this human journey away from suffering and struggle and into the present moment where we can live in service of others, grow in love and compassion, and, change the world together. Won't you join me? Most recently, I've been talking to college students about avoiding what is now being called the quarter life crash that happens to 75% of people in their late 20s and early 30s. It's steeped with anxiety and disillusionment, questioning your career choices, your life choices, what you're creating in your life, your identity. It can be isolating and lonely. And I know this crash well. And it wasn't called the quarter life crash back then, but that's why I'm here. To talk to those people who might not have hit that age yet, or if you've crashed and you're stuck and you're feeling lost and wondering how you got there, how the hell you got to where you are, you're in the right place. So I am an architect. Why is an architect talking about mindfulness? Well, 2 years after I graduated from the University of Minnesota, Golden Gophers, I was put in charge of the largest historic preservation project in the state of South Dakota. Huge for an intern, especially female in a male-dominated field. I remember having construction meetings with 10 to 15 men all standing around, listening carefully to what I had to say. I was killing it. On the outside, I looked large and in charge. I had it going on. But on the inside, total imposter syndrome. And it wasn't that I didn't give myself credit for what I had accomplished so far. I couldn't even see it. When you get lost and stuck, you can't really see life from beyond the lens of your experiences. I was so lost in low self-worth and anxiety, waking up with anxiety every day, that I thought that was normal. And by my early 30s, I had ticked all the boxes. And of course, those boxes have shifted a little bit since then. But, house, husband, 2 kids, career, right down to our pets, Mr. Fettuccine and Alfredo. Everything. I did it. I created everything you're supposed to need to be happy. Yet the weight of all that self-criticism and some poor decisions I had made just was too much. And at age 34, literally crying on the toilet in the middle of the night, I crashed, and it was horrifying. And I was so afraid, and I couldn't believe I had gotten there. And I made this vow to life, God, Buddha, the universe, anyone out there listening, please help me and I will change. Give me another chance and I'll do better. And I was given that second chance. So with my karmic debt in tow, I went out to make good on that vow. In the years between 9/11 and the COVID pandemic, I discovered some very profound truths about this amazing creative tool we all have called the mind. And it left me wondering, why the hell didn't anyone teach me about this sooner? This is information everybody should know. This is something we should be teaching our children. And again, that's why I'm here. And that's why I hope you're here to learn a few things about this incredible tool we have to create our lives. And that if we're not paying attention, this incredible tool can go way, way, way off course, creating all kinds of hidden influences in the body and the mind that we aren't even aware are there, yet we're creating from. The reason this amazing tool can get so far off course is because each of you has between 6,000 and 70,000 thoughts a day. 80% of those thoughts are negative and 95% repeat. So if we're not paying attention, this mostly negative and misguided self-talk is what we're using to create our lives. And that's just a fraction of the 11 million bits of information that your mind takes in every second. Yet consciously, you can only hold and examine a very small portion of that. And the rest, it's all running in the background on autopilot in your subconscious powerhouse, creating all kinds of habits and patterns and behaviors and beliefs you have about yourself without you even being aware. And it's actually a madhouse in there, an instantaneous collage of images, words, emotions, and sounds. I refer to it as the thoughts, emotions, and feelings highway, with horns honking and people yelling and screaming and car crashes and confusion. Yet you're creating from that chaos every day. But the good news is there is some order to this chaos. These are the things we should know about how the mind works. And again, I wish people had told me earlier and let me know earlier, because in knowing these, it's very, very empowering. And the first one is that the mind is habit-based. So whatever you think about over and over and over again, consciously or unconsciously, but consistently, repetition is key. You'll hear me say that over and over and over again, becomes a habit, and thus your conditioning. And since most of this is flying under the radar and 80% of it is negative, unfortunately, when we're not aware, we are reinforcing these things about ourselves so much so that they become very solid and very real. We start to take them on as our identity, our personality. We don't question it. We start to believe that this is who I am, and we live from that place of confusion. There's a great poem by Robert Blythe called The Long Bag We Drag Behind Us. And when we're children, we have 360-degree personalities. We are literally balls of light radiating out in every direction. But as we grow and our parents don't like certain things about us, good girls don't do that, good boys don't behave that way, we start to take those parts of us that we think are unacceptable and that we don't want to look at or show others, and we stuff them in this bag. And as we grow, we go to school, and it's not just our parents, but it's our peers and our teachers. And don't even get me started about middle school. We are stuffing this bag full of parts of us that we are scared to show others, and we don't even want to admit to, and all the way into our 20s. And this bag gets long and heavy. as we carry it around. And even though we over time forget what's in there, we're creating from what's in the bag. This poison starts to out. But again, the good news is, part of this fact that your mind is habit-based is that you are in charge of your mind, not your thoughts and your habits in the bag, you. And the way you start paying attention is by pledging to create the habit of watching the mind. I've created a set of mindfulness meditation practices known as Per Love, which I'll talk about as we get further along. But the first practice is P, pledge. Pledge to make the habit of watching your mind. And all you need to start doing this is 1 minute, 6 times a day. Do you have 6 minutes in a day to transform your life? And that's all it takes to start creating the habit. 1 minute, 6 times a day. You close your eyes, take a deep breath, and just watch. Just pay attention. You're not judging them. It's like a movie. You're just noticing. It's not like you have to do anything. You're just doing it 1 minute, 6 times a day, not judging, just noticing, being curious. And as you repeat that over and over and over, 1 minute, 6 times a day for several days, it will start to become habit. And the mind is habit-based. It will start to become second nature. And growing this awareness in your mind is the first step to this self-discovery. Because the second thing you want to know about the mind is that it does not discriminate between good and bad conditioning. It's a biocomputer. It doesn't care. Nerve cells that fire together, wire together, creating whatever you think about very solid and very real. It doesn't ask any questions. And that's really, in one respect, it's kind of a bummer when we're not paying attention because, 50% of us are adult children of divorce, and 80% of children deal with some type of trauma, divorce, or worse. Like in my case, for example, when my mother was crying in the laundry room and I walked in to ask her what was wrong. And she said, without a moment's hesitation, your father doesn't love us anymore. He's asked for a divorce. And I'm instantly, my world is shattered. I've done something wrong. I'm flawed. Why am I so unlovable? And then to go on to make the mistake of putting that love and trying to find that protection and safety that I lost with my father into my stepfather, Melvin, leaving me more confused about fathers and love and touch, feeling disgusting and shameful. So those are the things that I was stuffing in this bag. That's what I was stuffing in my long black bag. But the flip side of this is that the mind does not discriminate between good and bad conditioning. So you can choose your conditioning. And to do so, the first thing you need to do is to look in that bag. And to look in that bag, you need to be willing to be a little vulnerable. You just peek it open. What are you doing? Right? And it's going to be a little scary at first, but I would say that before you look, give yourself compassion for your situation. Stop talking, right? And understand that this is not who you are. The stuff that you've tucked away, that you've created in your mind, that's actually flowed and become part of your body, these are just habits and thoughts. And with courage and this vulnerability, you can choose. You can examine them and take a look at which ones serve you. You can question them. Are these even true? Because the subconscious mind isn't going to question them, but you can. And you can toss out those ones that don't serve you, creating space for not only new habits and patterns, but also to find that amazing awareness, that amazing presence, that self that exists between your thoughts, emotions, and feelings. Now, the third thing you're going to want to know about how this incredible creative tool works is that it's not evil. It's not a bully. Its job is to protect you. One of the main jobs your mind has is to keep you safe. And it does so with the idea that, hey, this conditioning has been working so far. Let's just go ahead and keep it. It creates these laws of transformation that any new ideas must pass through. And if they don't meet the new conditioning, they're often altered or discarded. So when you go to change, rest assured, you will hit resistance. You will, this is stupid. This is never going to work. Expect it. It will be there. But on the flip side, your mind will protect whatever you create, and you are the creator. So when you go to change and you meet this resistance, knowing that these thoughts and this attack on any new ideas will come up, you can accept them. Accepting first exactly how they are, the habits that you've created, that cuts them off at the knees. If you don't engage with them, if you don't try to push them away or fight with them, that they're going to dissipate on their own like a wave in the ocean, leaving space for you to create new habits and patterns through what? Of course, repetition. Do say something to yourself over and over and over again, believing it, creating new ideas and patterns like I am amazing and I can change the world. And when you do this, and when you make habits of these new ideas, your mind not only takes them on as new ideas and protects them, it will move your life in that direction. That is how the mind works. That's how powerful of tool you have at your beck and call. Neuroscience talks about, Dr. Joe Dispenza tells us how nerve cells that fire together, wire together, making anything we think about over and over again, whether consciously or subconsciously, but consistently, seem very solid and very real. It creates a neuronet of relationships to each other that becomes so thick and so concretized that we can't see past it, that we take it on as who we are. We believe there's nothing more. Literally at this point, you cannot see beyond the lens of your experiences. But in this movie, and I love Dr. Joe Dispenza, he talks about how nerve cells that no longer fire together, no longer wire together, and that you have a choice. You have a choice that when these patterns come up, you can look at them, you can question them. And as I said in the initial podcast, it starts by paying attention, by creating the habit of watching the mind. Because if you're not watching it, you're on autopilot. And these patterns and habits and behaviors, most of which are negative, as the mind has a negative bias, continue to get stronger and stronger. But you can look at them. And when you let them be, when you don't engage with these thoughts, these nerve cells that no longer fire together, no longer wire together, creating gaps in that neural net and space for your wisdom and clarity to come through. I talk about kind of getting off that thoughts, emotions, feelings highway, stepping back and letting the traffic clear a little bit and see what you find there. So that points to when you start to break that apart, you find that there's no ego there. Even the identity of who you are is a thought and a concept. When you were born, I was not Holly. You were not named you, but you were told you are Holly, or you are whoever you were told. And I am Holly, and this is who you are, and this is where you live. But when you break that apart, you find that there's so much more to who you truly are, to your true nature. When you realize that you are not your thoughts, you are the one observing them, which leads me to spirituality, which is where I actually started my journey. In the first book I ever read, like I said, when I started my journey, I had no idea where I was going, but things started showing up. I walked into a Barnes and Noble across the state. I was away on business, and on the table was a book, and it said, "Stand Up for Your Life." It's by Cheryl Richardson. And in the introduction, it says, when you ask the universe for change, it will rock your world. Be careful what you ask for, because your mind is that powerful. And things, you'll be sent the right people, situations, and events to help you along your way. Adyashanti talks about in one of his books that everyone is on a trajectory back to their true nature. That if you look at the obstacles in your life as a teacher, as showing you something that you're caught in, a thought or a habit or pattern that you're caught in, that your true awareness is caught in, you can look at them as lessons. I'll go into my story more as we go into these podcasts. But for 8 years after my divorce, I was struggling to hold on to my children, to prevent my alienation from them, because I was reliving my childhood as the parent. I had been alienated from my father, and I knew what that does to children. And it was very difficult, and I had to be very strong in front of my children. And when the cops showed up, when there was mishaps and misunderstandings dealing with my ex-husband, and I was very strong in front of them. But as soon as they shut the door and they were gone, I would fall to pieces on the floor. But every time I picked myself up, I would see things a little differently. So I know that I needed those 8 years to help me unravel all of the thoughts and patterns of low self-worth and disgusting and shameful that I had created around myself. And I did. I started to question those things and to listen to the teachings, the spiritual teachings, and to realize that, again, we are not our thoughts, emotions, and feelings, that we are the one observing them. Eckhart Tolle says there's a huge realm of intelligence beyond thought. And that's who we are, that essence, that soul that observes and creates from inside, creates the outside from inside. I also practiced, like I said, then I got to the East Coast, and life's amazing. Everything shows up. I was working as an architect, and I Googled meditation near me, and within 1 mile of my my work, was a meditation class. And I went to the class, and it was the teacher was from the New Kadampa tradition, a Buddhist tradition, and it was a great class on compassion. And I went back the next week, and I heard someone talking, and they said, "Do you have any deeper courses than this?" And the teacher said, "We have just finished a 5-year course on Joyful Path, and we're starting a new book in 2 weeks." And so I joined that class, and that book was called The New Heart of Wisdom. And it was all about emptiness, the biggest teaching in Buddhism, the fact that everything, that our minds are empty like space, have no form or color, but have this amazing power to perceive. Again, pointing back to the fact that we are not our thoughts, emotions, and feelings. We're not our habits. This world, this amazing world, was created from emptiness. And again, science backs that up when you take a look at the quantum field. And when you look at everything that's so solid, like this book and these glasses and this person, and you look down at the cellular level, and then you go down to the atom, and then you go down to the neutrons and protons. And even below that, you see waves of particles flashing in and out of existence, energy coming in and out, little wavelets of energy that are even beyond our understanding, that have somehow come together in such a way that they seem solid and they seem real. But even science tells us that they're empty, that they move in and out of existence. The fact that we're here is a freaking miracle, and every day is a blessing. And when we start to unravel our neural net and to look at this emptiness and understand how we are here, it just opens up a whole different realm of possibility. You can never find permanent happiness and peace in your mind. As I explained in the initial episode, it's just this crazy madhouse of constant thoughts, emotions, and feelings. And our ego, right? When we're born, we have 360-degree personalities, but we're born into this world where we're immediately slapped on the butt, and we're screaming, and we're hungry. And so we go to work right away as this awareness to create this ego, this who we are, to be okay, to protect us, and then, we're okay. We got mom and dad here, and I'm okay. And then all of a sudden dad's gone and the whole thing goes wacko. And we consistently spend our entire lives trying to keep this outside world the same to be okay, instead of realizing what happened, what we did, and that we can undo that. And underneath it, we are more than okay. We are, beyond words. That in your heart, when you can quiet the mind and you find that essence of who you are, that is where your permanent happiness and peace is going to be found. And yeah, so I moved across the country at age 49. I packed up everything and moved into a Dharma house in San Francisco. A year later, I retired down to Southern California, where the last piece of this amazing puzzle came together. Again, as an architect, my job was to take all these pieces and to put them together in a way that are clear and straightforward. And I'm reading a book that I had read 10 years into my journey called You Can Be Happy No Matter What by Dr. Richard Carlson. And I had picked it up again, about 20 years into this journey. And you change every day. So I certainly got stuff out of that book 10 years into the journey. But this time I noticed a small footnote at the bottom that it's called You Can Be Happy No Matter What, 5 Principles to Happiness or something like that. And this footnote says that, oh, by the way, the first 4 of these principles were come from a book with the unfortunate title of Sanity, Insanity, and Common Sense, a brand new approach to happiness, written by Dr. Enrique Suarez and his colleagues back in the 1980s. Now, I get it. The 1980s were 40 years ago, and we want to stay current. But Dr. Carlson, who wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, very popular in self-help, thought that this was important, and not only published the book, the original book, Sanity, Insanity, and Common Sense, went out of publication in 1990, but he published in 95 and 99 and again in 2006, because the world needed this information. And he unfortunately passed away quickly after that. And certainly the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff series overpowered maybe that book. But the information, I got a copy of the Insanity, and Common Sense, and I'm reading it. And it talks about psychology and the science of psychology, and how some people have kind of never really taken psychology serious, because most other sciences, math, biology, neuroscience, has a set of principles, of functions that are always true, that has a common denominator, where if you add this together, if you add 2 numbers together, you will get the sum of those numbers. There's formulas and basis that proves this science to be true. And he talks about how we do in psychology have a common denominator, and that is our ability to think. That is the fact that we can think is the common denominator, and really the only requirement to self-realization. Ultimately, it's not thinking, but paying attention and taking a look at these habits and patterns and unraveling them is the key to liberation. And he talks about these laws of transformation that our minds create, because our minds are meant to protect our programming, that all new ideas must pass through. I talked about them in the initial podcast. And I'm sitting there looking at this and just, I was blown away, because these laws of transformation talk about how new ideas are altered and discarded, and that we are looking through the lens of these laws. We are looking through the lens of our past, and if we start to back away from it, in what I now call the awareness camp rather than the entanglement camp, you can see your thoughts and habits and patterns from a distance, and then they don't affect you as much, and you start to realize this clarity of space and this amazing truth about who you are. And in looking at that and realizing that it pointed back exactly to everything else I looked at, it was a final piece in the puzzle. And it's exactly then when I printed out a book proposal and I looked over it and I could see this path to clarity that all of these modalities back up. And again, my plan is to bring guests on to not prove this to you, but just to reinforce what I'm talking about. It blew me away I'm an architect, right? I didn't know this stuff. And then when they all started pointing back, it just blew me away. And it became a part of my course that I teach, simple and obvious, which I know can upset people because it's, the world of mental health is so complicated. But I've created a set of mindfulness meditation practices known as Per Love, in which I teach all of these modalities and what I've learned. The first 3 practices, pledge, evaluate, recognize, are the cerebral part of the formula, where you pledge to make the habit of watching your mind, evaluate the habits or the patterns and habits that you've stuffed away in your long black bag, and then recognize them as they come up in your daily life. And those first 3 practices, I think, are kind of the missing piece to clarity, to mental health. It's that straightforward, because then those then lead to the love practices, the more spiritual part of the formula, where you locate that space that remains when the thoughts, emotions, and feelings, I call it your TEF, are subsided. When you drop into your heart, you open your heart to feel this amazing flow of energy that you are. You then invest in what you find there, the unconditional love, the universal compassion, and infinite wisdom. And finally, E, expanding beyond your conditioned limits. So it's a very beautiful journey to be on, and it's doable. And the only requirement is your humanity. And so over the next episodes, I'll bring in people from these different modalities that we will talk about these things with. And I love it. And again, it's an evolution of my journey and hopefully part of yours. So thank you so much for being here again. I will also bring in people to talk about their own stories, their own journeys of hitting this wall, hitting this quarter life crisis, getting stuck and lost, wondering how they got there, and finding their way out. There's many paths back to your true nature. Per Love is just one of them. And so I'll be bringing other guests on as well to talk about their stories and their findings. Because if you believe there's more for you out there, you don't have to know how to get there. The mind is that powerful. And the mind brought you to this podcast of Pay Attention. So thank you again for being here with me. I hope to see you. I hope you listen to future podcasts, reach out, and let me know if you have any questions. Again, I'm Holly McNeill, the Mindfulness Architect. Namaste. So I hope you enjoyed going back to the actual 2 initial episodes of Pay Attention. And I know I did. I haven't seen them for a while. But the point is that we're all on this journey, and being here in this human journey, we create all these habits and patterns we get entangled in. And the path to awakening is to unravel all of that, unravel all of those beliefs and patterns about who you think you are. And it's pretty straightforward, and it's doable. And hopefully you'll join us for other episodes of Pay Attention as we explore habits, as we explore neuroscience, psychology, quantum physics, Buddhism, spirituality, all pointing towards that awareness, that openness of who you are, it is all your thoughts and patterns that create all your suffering and struggling. Without that, there's clarity and peace and stillness. So join me on this journey from the chaos of the mind to the clarity, peace, and stillness of the open heart. We'll be going back and forth between new episodes and back to the archives. So hopefully we'll see you again here on Pay Attention.
Thanks for watching Pay Attention with Holly McNeill. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next week on Wednesday at 10 o'clock Pacific, 1 o'clock Eastern.